The European Union says Afghanistan scenario shows that the bloc must strive for greater strategic and decision-making autonomy. EU Council President Charles Michel says the bloc must take action to be better prepared for military evacuations if and when needed. Earlier, Policy Chief Joseph Borrell also described that the EU and the US were united in Afghanistan, but withdrawal timing and nature were set in Washington. In an article, Borrell said the evacuation from Afghanistan is a wake-up call for Brussels and that it must build its own strategic abilities. He said the Europeans found themselves depending on American decisions in Afghanistan. He noted that a more strategically autonomous and militarily capable EU would be better able to address the challenges. The policy chief said the events in Afghanistan should lead to deepening the Atlantic alliance. For more on this, we have with us Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood. Sir, thank you for your time. Mr. Masood, President Joe Biden made a forceful defense of his decision to leave Afghanistan, telling Americans he refuses to send another generation to fight in a forever war. Why did the U.S. prolong this war so long and now make an abrupt pullout?
Well, I think President Biden obviously was defending his decision to adhere to the withdrawal timelines. And he did not mention much about the chaotic disorder that accompanied it. So I think he was just trying to say that whatever the mission was of the U.S. in getting involved in Afghanistan was already fulfilled. And and I don't think he really elaborated on that mission, except to say that, it was meant to kill Osama bin Laden and that they succeeded. So I think their mission of having an inclusive government in Afghanistan and also having a modern Afghanistan and trying to sort of build a completely different sort of Afghanistan altogether. People, you cannot transform a country by someone else. It has to come intrinsically. It has to come through the education of the people, through their understanding of how the world functions, what are their national requirements. I think that was completely ignored. And then, of course, U.S. and the Western world sort of targeted a very selective sort of an approach in the sense that they developed a certain class in cities. No doubt that they were able to transform them, give them good education, health facilities, and exposure to the world. But the rest of the country remained as backward as ever, or under the influence of forces like Taliban. So the Taliban had to return in that sense, and you saw what happened.
Right. Mr. Masood, President Biden has blamed Ashraf Ghani's government for unassailable Taliban's takeover. Should the previous Afghan government be only held responsible for this defeat, or the U.S. hasty withdrawal was also the main reason?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, but the fact is that the previous Afghan government was really not a people's government in that sense, that it did not have the support, and it was relying heavily on the U.S. And external support of the Western world. So I think that has to be realized, and they did not transform, Afghanistan fundamentally. And then I think there is also a very major lesson to be learned, that you cannot have another country transform people, of another country. It has to come from within. And the leadership has to be thrown from within. You cannot impose leadership by outside forces and expect that there would be a change. So there were certain fundamental flaws in the whole approach of the Americans. And Then they came out with a very ambitious plan initially, saying that, they will transform the attitude of the Afghans towards women, which was a good thing, but it can't come by imposing your will on them. It has to come from within, through education, through exposure to the foreign world, through understanding the benefits of education for women as to how it will really transform the generations in Afghanistan. All that was not done, and it was also, again, very selective. And then Afghanistan was a very sort of a traditional and an old society. And so that also was a great disadvantage. Then the neighborhood was also very turbulent. So there are several factors, I think, which were responsible for what all happened.
Right. Mr. Masood, now the U.S. says that the Taliban will have to earn their legitimacy and support by meeting their commitments and obligations. Do you think the Taliban will be able to gain support of the international community in near future?
Well, I think much would depend how they conduct themselves. If they really take care of, if they do not go after their opponents in the way that, they did last time. And if they really conduct in a way which brings about greater cohesion and unity amongst the Afghans, I think that would be rewarded by the international community. But the international community is very closely watching their commitments and their words, their statements are matched with their performance and with their policies. So I think that would be very important for the Afghan leadership to ensure that they really conduct themselves in a way which harmonizes with what the world expects of any country, and especially a country which is under close scrutiny.
Right. Mr. Masood, fighting between Afghanistan's resistance forces and the Taliban fighters is reportedly raging on various regions of the Panjshir, Parwan and Baghlan provinces. Can the unrest spread to more provinces, and whether the Taliban are able to contain this?
Well, I think they will be able to overcome the resistance eventually, although I think in Panjshir they are having very serious opposition. And the Tajiks, a certain group amongst Tajiks is very much opposed to them, which is under, the former Talat Masood's party. So I think there will be resistance from there, but ultimately they will have to, it will be overcome. And what I feel is, what is important is that they should seek a political solution to all these problems. They should have their work for a political inclusion of all these groups rather than use your military force alone in order to overwhelm them and to subjugate them. Because you can't treat your own people as, subjects. You have to treat them as equals. And you do not give them an opportunity to express, a different viewpoint and so on. So I think all these things would matter eventually for the peace and stability of Afghanistan.
Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood, thank you for speaking to Indus News.